I know John McHugh said he's going to be running a little bit late, so he is on his way. He did notify us earlier that he is running a bit behind. He is intending on showing up.
Busy at work? We have a meeting, 2 weeks.
I'm not sure who it is for, well, the taxes. So, all my stuff should be all lined up. What's going
You get that Tuesday? You get that Tuesday? Oh, I was just waiting for a clean up. I get it. I need to have it done. I still have, you'll be good. And it's starting to decay on the edge. You must have changed it. And I knew that a year ago. And he does want it.
How you been? Didn't recognize you all nice with your haircut.
No, I just got a tune up today.
Oh, looks good.
Yeah, it was, okay, shaggy.
Yeah, awesome.
And now this is the back.
That's all right. We just want to make sure that people have enough time.
I used to go to John Gallison down in Media. And when I first started going, I needed a lot of stuff. So I came. And I always used to laugh and he's quick to know we can, he'd bring it up to the side. It's like a
Sorry.
He's like, I said, well, it comes out to my sheet, I think you went too far. The worst ones that we put about. It is what it is.
All right, good evening, folks. As I said, for those latecomers, there is a sign-in sheet if you wish to speak. Currently, we have 4 people signed up in 120 minutes. So we will give those people an opportunity to speak first. And again, John McHugh is on his way. He did say he was running a little bit late, so he does plan to attend, but we do have 2 hours. So whoever signed up would like to speak, please feel free to go ahead.
Is there anybody here from like the Parks and Recs or the other committees? Is there anybody here from the other committees that could maybe tell us a little bit that people don't know what you do?
What you guys are working on?
Yeah.
Projects that are.
Projects, what's the purpose of your committee?
Shane?
You're up.
You're up, Shane. Come on up here, Shane. Here, I can give you a microphone and move my trash.
Oh, wow.
But you have to introduce yourself, Shane.
All right, good evening, Shane Hackman, currently the chair of the Land Preservation Committee. Been involved with that for about, I guess about 10 years. Let's see, so the Land Preservation Committee is working to basically ensure that the township mission, where it says a tranquil and a rural way of life, we're trying to make sure that we can kind of continue that in perpetuity. The main mechanism that we use to achieve that is working with farmers and other landowners. We've got like 10.1 acres, I believe, is the minimum parcel. funding sources, like the William Penn Foundation, and the city of Wellington actually chips in as well, because as part of their source water protection program, all of the water that we see going down the streams around here winds up coming out of their faucets and showers down there in Wilmington. So they've got a vested interest in this, and then we get money from the state and the county as well. But we will purchase the development rights to pretty much any farm we can, and that will ensure that that farm is permanently protected from development and can't turn into a sea of houses like we've seen popping up, unfortunately, around here lately. So if you have, we're currently kind of trying to get the program kicked up back into high gear again after a bit of a hiatus with COVID. That really slowed down a lot of face-to-face meetings, and nobody really wants to sell a key asset or talk about it over the phone or over email. So if you have neighbors who are farmers, or you're farmers yourselves, or you've got some ground and you'd like to make sure it stays open, yeah, reach out to me, or Chip is also on the committee, and we work with John Goodall at the Brandywine Conservancy, and Warren here can also help you on the resources. If you've got farms and open space next to you, and you're friends with those landowners, please reach out to them and tell them that this program's available, and that we'd be happy to help them sell their development rates and try and keep Honeybrook farming. And keep the traffic low.
Is farming the only thing that you guys are focusing on, or are you also focusing, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have got up.
Go ahead.
Are you also looking at other areas of ground, like, the wetlands?
Great question.
You know what I mean? Other thing other than farming.
Yep.
Like, I have like almost 2 acres. Jerry's my other neighbor. He's got whatever, and if he sells, he's selling to me first. So, anyway, can I come to you and say, look, if something were to happen to me, I mean, I know my kids don't want it, but can I, as a citizen of Honeybrook Township, come to you and say, look, I don't want nobody, building on my property after I'm dead? Would you do that? If you kind of get what I mean?
Yeah, it depends on a number of factors. If your place is eligible, there's a certain amount of acreage that you have to be considered kind of as a standalone. If you're adjacent to other land that's already preserved, that would help meet the acreage requirements.
Okay.
Because we had to do that with my place. My place, I think, was adjacent to an Amish farm that got preserved, and that helped me get my place covered.
Yeah.
And then once I was in, then my neighbor, a little further along, she was that much more eligible, she could get covered.
Another question, and I probably can't, answer, but I'm going to make it kind of vague. But with all the developments that are coming in, with the Sweetwater here, with the 2 trailer parks getting enlarged, and the Dior Morton situation. Do you guys go out to these people and say, hey, let's see what we can do about buying your property before, these scalawags come and buy it up? Or do they have to come to you? I mean,
We do try and reach out to landowners who are putting something up for sale to see what we can do. So far, we haven't done a purchase of just land outright. We've just been buying development rights and working with landowners directly. It is entirely voluntary too, so I mean, we can say, hey, this is out there, but there's nothing that can be done to compel somebody to do a program like this. But and then, you also asked about if we go beyond farming. I want to come back to that too, because we've open space that is, it could be swampland, it could be forest land, and that's got natural resource value to it that we would also be interested in preserving, for sure.
So, with the upcoming developments, and there, can't think of the name, wetlands, and, the rainwater river and conservatory, and, I'll have to come back on it, how I can answer that question.
Okay.
Okay. But how much land have we preserved so far in our township?
That's a really good question. And I've got a really nice map that I don't have with me. And I wish I did.
I guess.
But anyway, we've gotten about 33% of the total acreage of the township under permanent preservation now.
And what's our goal?
The goal, there is another about 33% that could still be preserved.
Oh, so that would be more than half, okay.
Yep, so we've got preserved more than half of what's possible.
Now, can anybody from the, community volunteer, into this? That's where we want to get, make sure that our environment stays the way it is.
Sure.
I'm tired of going through Morgantown, I'm tired of going through Exton, there are many Philadelphias,
Yep. Yeah.
We need to keep our beauty. That's what's the nice thing, is our beauty.
Mhm.
And I've lived here all my life, and I've seen more development coming, and I see it coming even more and quicker, and we just need to, is there a way to go to our officials or Congress people and stuff? To save stuff, you know what I mean? Would that help too?
Yep. Yeah, there are probably changes that can be made to zoning and other permitting practices that other townships have done as well, that are things we could look into. I don't know a whole lot about that. I've just been learning a little bit here and there when I can, but
I've just seen that Sweetwater, they took people's land that's worked for it, that's still working for it, to make a turn lane into development we never even wanted. And I don't think it's fair to us as individuals or hardworking people to allow some developer to come in and take that away from us.
Nope.
You understand? I know it's eminent domain, but where is our rights as human people and wanting to protect our land? As you can tell, I'm very go-getter with this, so. But I'm going to stop my questions and we'll let you go on.
So following up on what you said, my name is Valerie Schultz, following up on what you were saying about zoning. So back in 2018, I guess there was a major rezoning of, especially my end of the township, the southern portion of the township by 322. And that's really what set us up for some major development that's happened in there right now. A lot of that used to be agricultural. They turned it into mixed use. And so now that's allowed for this high density housing to get put up there. And D.R. Horton housing, which is at least the idea of townhomes, has been approved for that land, which is going to be put on some extensive wetlands, which is right near the headwaters to the Brandywine River and 2 pipelines. My question for you is, that's another way to preserve land, as you said, by zoning and controlling zoning. Do you guys have any input and discussions with the Board of Supervisors about areas that they should really, consider not rezoning? And because that area that got approved for D.R. Horton used to be zoned as low density housing. It got changed to mixed use zoning so that, this high density housing could then be put in there. So do you guys have any input? Do you work with the Board of Supervisors at all to have any input in the zoning changes if anything occurs?
we haven't yet.
Because I think that's something that really could be, I know John's talked also about having this environmental advisory committee, in conjunction with you guys in land preservation. And I'm sure there's discussions about what the best way is to promote development around here that's smart. I would think that would be something that you guys would want to have those discussions with board supervisors in conjunction with maybe this environmental advisory committee to really target areas that, you may want to reach out and preserve. I mean, my understanding, and this is maybe just hearsay, that land preservation did reach out to that landowner that D.R. Horton is buying, and he turned it down. So I mean, it's not always a possibility, but having somebody looking over, areas that really shouldn't be rezoned or should stay maybe low density housing, it seems like to me that would be an area that input from land preservation would be helpful in.
Yep, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I'm not very, I understand a lot about how our particular program operates, as far as zoning and various regulations around that. I'm not an expert there. I know what I'd like to see happen, and what I'd like to see happen is, I'd love to see a lot less development going on in this township. And,
But I think
I'd love to see this.
that's a key way.
I'd like, yeah, well, I think it's important for bodies like the Planning Commission to put great scrutiny on developers and really dig into what they're trying to do as much as possible. Really, give them a hard time. These are people coming in with billions of dollars who are trying to push their way into this community and get what they want and make as much money as possible and spend as little money as possible on us.
And
So-
the other thing we realized with the D.R. Horton application, going through the zoning process, is that, our special exception criteria were too broadly written. So the zoning board felt as though it was very difficult for them to deny that proposed development outright because the criteria were written so broadly that they thought they would lose on appeal. So, I mean, that's something that, we've been talking with some of the zoning members of, how to tighten that up so that future developers that come in and want a special exception are going to have to meet very specific criteria and really establish what the impact could be on the community, especially when it comes to water tables, traffic, impact on, police force, on fire. So all of those things need to be considered more carefully, and having better written criteria, I think, could help with that. Just one last question for you. So at one point, do you feel as though we've acquired all the possible land we can, and you guys stop collecting the 0.5% earned income tax? Have you considered that?
We have. That's something we've definitely talked about, and that's been, that's actually part of the current land preservation plan, which is a document about that thick.
Yeah.
But the part, I believe, we've got thresholds set for basically how much money we can have on hand before that tax would get reduced and then eliminated. And then, of course, if we get to a point where there is nothing more that's preservable in the township, then that tax would be eliminated. Some of those funds are also being used by Parks and Recreation as well. There was a certain amount that was allocatable, and the supervisors have decided to spend that money to do some fix-ups on Humboldt Park.
Now, was the Humboldt Park actually acquired under the land preservation program, or no?
Dates the program, I think.
Yeah, so I thought the money could only be used for parks that were acquired under the land preservation program. That's what the statute reads. So, yeah.
So we're
I wasn't
taking,
part of that decision.
we're taking money from the land preservation out to do improvements on the park, where it could be actually spent wiser trying to get more land and get more goals.
Disclaimer, I was not a part of that decision.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, I know you sound like you're getting beat up, but I'm, no. We just, are like you, very heartfelt and conscientious about our neighborhood. And, I mean, you just go down 322 going down to downtown, you can see that poor, the pond that, I'm not even going in. But, the traffic, what used to take me 20 minutes to get to my doctor's, takes me almost an hour in downtown. It's too much. And we need to so how do we get you to be onto an approved board member?
Because he's the chair.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, never mind. I'm.
So did I just hear that we use money from land preservation to update the parks?
Yes.
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 Yes, you did.
And
That has been reallocated.
that's legal, like, do people, I didn't know that we were doing that.
It's not according to the statute.
There's a certain percentage, I'm not sure exactly what the statute reads, of how much can be used. The official recommendation from land preservation was to check with the solicitor, find out exactly what's.
And is there someone here from Parks and Recreation?
Yeah, I just showed up.
Oh, you just showed up. Okay. So, whenever you get up there, I have a question about person.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So, I was at one of the meetings a couple of weeks ago, and I think Lauren there was some talk about, and I don't think anything was approved yet, but some talk about a skate park being added, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, so James Humboldt Park had gone through a process for potential redevelopment, and they held several meetings. How long ago was that? Was that a year or two ago? I think it was
Close to 2 years ago.
It was pre-COVID,
Yeah.
and they had some public meetings, some public input. There was, they took that back and worked with a landscape developer, and they provided the township with a redevelopment program, which the prior board approved moving forward with. The prior administration established a DCNR grant for $225,000. It was a matching grant, which means we had to at least spend $225,000. So when I came on board in December, I was presented with phase one, which was at the initial point probably $600,000, but I think in 2022 would be well over $1 million. So I had concerns, so I started going to all the board meetings and
Yeah.
bringing up my concern that this is quite a large investment. The total for all four phases in 2019 was $4.1 million to renovate James Humboldt Park, which is our only township park. So I discussed it with the various boards. We walked the park with the landscape developer. Melissa walked with Laura and I and a few other board members, and came back with the understanding that it might be a little bit excessive. So my recommendation to the board, which they agreed upon, was just to place the skateboard park, which was part of phase one, and not do any of the other improvements. So it would take the potentially $1 million down to about $200,000 to $250,000 total, of which half would be paid for by the DCNR grant.
So we're going to put that type of money into a skate park.
Mhm.
Like, I'm just wondering, because I don't see a lot of skateboarders in the area. Like, where did we come up with an idea? But there's a ton of pickleball players.
So that was what the community asked for
It
most.
was?
Yes, that had like 84% of the respondents. I think that was the most requested item, was the skate park.
Oh, okay.
That you don't see them because in Honeybrook you can't skateboard down our streets, right? So obviously it's not. Most people don't do it on sidewalks, so you don't see them because there's nowhere for them to go. So currently they're going to have to leave the area to utilize it, so.
Okay, I don't.
And my thought
I don't,
process
and I know
was,
you weren't here then, but I don't recall getting any surveys asked, and they're very well. could
there were
be.
surveys posted online.
Okay,
Again, so there's a James Humboldt master plan that you can review, that's a public document.
yeah,
It goes over what was discussed at the public meetings, how many response we came back with. So that document was all part of the board's decision. So it clearly shows when they had the meetings, the participants, what the requests were, good evening, John, and the like. So based upon the request of the public, in-person meetings and the surveys, that helped guide the landscape architect into developing what he believed would be a workable plan to rehabilitate James Humboldt Park.
is that that can be changed at any point, or we discussed, I mean,
Board can do whatever they want.
were there any requests for updating the basketball courts? Because the one meeting I was at, I don't live in either neighborhood, I don't have kids that play basketball, but I know there was a lot of fighting about basketball. And one of the people from the new development, their HOA board had a good suggestion. He's like, sounds like we need more basketball courts in this area. And I mean, the basketball court up there is terrible, and I see kids playing on that all the time, and like pickleball is a huge sport. I mean, maybe in 2019 or 2018 when that was done, but families are up there, elderly people are up there, even my teens go up there, but I don't see many people skateboarding up there. And like you said, there may not be.
There's no place
to
on the
go.
skateboard, so you can't see what's not provided, right? So, again, my.
Occasionally see them downtown, but
You do, but my point as a manager is we have basketball courts, we have tennis courts that are co-used as pickleball courts. We have baseball fields, we have a walking trail, we have a pavilion. Some of them were due for renovation, but there's no skate park.
A few years ago, there was plans to repave tennis courts. Are they still planning on doing that?
Well, that was part of the,
Well, they were gonna move the skate, they were gonna move the tennis courts towards the parking lot.
and from my own experience, it's desperately needed, as I go out my leg on that one, on that court, we do need to get it fixed.
So you think that'll happen, correct?
It has to happen, yeah. It's, the thing is, we've been lagging behind so much. If you look at the inventory and projections, I mean, one of the difficult things was for us to find land, because Humboldt Park really doesn't accommodate the township. I'm in the southwest corner, and, my kids can't get on a bike or Route 10 just to get to a park or anything. It's just the way, so most of us are relying on everybody's backyard for recreation. But if you want to get a tennis court, and where we really need a lot of that recreation area is in the northeast corner, where you have some of the new developments going in. But some of these properties are private, they're mobile home parks, but they do need some basketball courts. They need something out there besides, yes.
I was at the Parks and Recs Committee, and we discussed that, and they do want to resurface the basketball courts, the tennis courts, the pickleball courts. They were talking about resurfacing them with whatever.
yeah, so a couple comments along those lines. You're right, at the last Parks and Rec meeting, most of the agenda governed what kind of recommendations we might come back to the board of supervisors with relative to Humboldt Park. We did agree as a committee to pare back only to what we thought was critical to making some improvements to the park and operating within the grant money so that, we had to put some structure around it based on what we thought made the most sense. So some of the things we talked about, and I just saw draft minutes circulating today, so you should see the minutes posted from that last meeting to the website here, I would think, within the next couple of days. And please come to our next meeting if you'd like, and we'd love to talk more about it. But some of the things we looked at, and the Warren referenced the walkthrough. A couple of members from the committee participated in the walkthrough with a couple of things in mind. If anyone's been up there, there's things that are structurally problematic, in our opinion, with the park up there, and we wanted to focus our efforts on that. We did talk about the skate park. We did talk about a critical thing, which is the drainage out by the pavilion in that back area. And that's an area I think collectively we feel like the drainage needs to be improved back there, because you can't even go back there on a day like today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna sink up to your waist. Yeah, to make that more functional for the community. We did talk about things such as, where that old basketball court is, perhaps moving that, because talking about a skate park, we're talking about right by Slippery Road, because we felt it would be more conducive to being able to keep an eye on kids that are there, right? Because we don't have lights, we don't have patrols there, and we know that there's a problem with kids creating mischief out there. We did kick around the idea of maybe, that old basketball court, being able to move a court up closer to the road as well, and then repaving that for additional pickleball courts or multi-use courts or tennis courts, a wide variety of ideas. So these were all part of the pool of things that we discussed that we're going to put into package recommendations that we're going to share with Warren and the Board of Supervisors. So look for those minutes. I would encourage you to reach out to me or anybody on the committee if you have questions, or come to our next meeting.
And what about that back part that's problematic?
The pavilion area?
Yeah, what is going to be done with that was proposed to be done with that area?
Well, unlimited funds, there was a grand plan that this architect that Warren referenced drew up that would have, changed the whole area, but, operating within budget constraints, we want to at least fix the drainage issue. And that's one of the recommendations we made, is to fix that so it's more functional.
Have you thought about putting any cameras up there, to maybe help with some of the vandalism?
We talked about it, but really at the end of the day, we said, well, crimes are still going to be committed. It just gives us an opportunity to watch crimes be committed.
Yeah.
So they did, the road's blocked off, so cars can't get back there anymore. I think that serves as a good deterrent. But, a lot of the other ideas that we keep trying, like getting lights back there is, it's a small fortune to be able to set that up. Yeah.
I'm not sure I would dismiss the importance of security cameras that easily, though, because they can be utilized in the actual apprehension and prosecution if there are offenses committed.
You have the faces, why couldn't we?
If you could possibly identify who did it, right?
Well,
But you have
that's
to-
a big
you'd have to
aid,
have
though, in
focus.
assisting in that process.
So we could ask someone from Euclid Township, this experience.
Yeah, so I was a police officer for 29 years. Most cameras just don't have the quality at this point to give you the clarity to see that. And if you do, they often are so low that they are actually the first targets of vandalism. So, they typically work as a deterrent for very shortly, just like speed lines on a road. And then as soon as people realize that nothing happens when they do something, and again, that's based upon being a police officer for 29 years and reviewing thousands of hours of videotape every single year from retail thefts in stores, right? So Target, their camera's horrible, right? As soon as they get outside, you can't find a license plate number, and these cameras are in the parking lot. So could we put cameras up? Absolutely. Could we get it to the quality that we could get a visual? Absolutely. The cost would be astronomical. The cost to have those software upgrades and maintenance of all of that video would be, that's the cost that people don't really know about. Those body cameras, they're great. The huge part of that budgetary item is actually storing all those gigs of data. Because if they're not recorded, then we have to store them, and that's actually probably 80% of the cost of a video surveillance system is the retention of that video. Obviously, the higher quality, the larger the file, right? So, we can record 24/7, but the resolution will be so low, as someone had already mentioned, you're not going to be able to make out anything about the person.
I don't know, I've got Amazon cameras and let me tell you, I know who's coming and who's not.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, this is unfortunately different when they're 50 or 60 feet up on a pole camera, because if you leave it at eye height, it's going to be the first thing to get vandalized.
So Kevin, that can't be moved forward at all, right? That area that kind of sits back in, that can't be moved forward at all, right?
At cost, right? I mean, again, we've taken a step back and said, okay, we had that grant for $225,000, it's a matching grant. What are we willing to spend to do stuff like that. We did look at that. One of the drawings that the architect came up with was moving that all together, making that more natural, and moving the pavilion closer.
So it's
You
a
know,
lot.
it all adds up, you know, with some of the other stuff we're trying to do.
The Little League had a plan a few years ago where we were gonna have like 4 fields, because we desperately needed some fields around here. The problem was fundraising and the property, where it would be comparable to what we have at Lionville, because we go over to there and say, wow, it'd be nice to have something like this over here. But its location, cost, and right now, Humboldt Park has been serving our needs.
How many acres does Humboldt Park have?
Was it?
It's a little over 11 acres. But as the landscape architect said, whatever design, it's just, there's a lot of facilities within that small park. You know, we did discuss moving that pavilion forward, and even where the smaller top lot is, the landscape architect, it says that shouldn't even be there with fly balls, cars driving in and out, where the traffic flows. He actually had concern, I believe he addressed while we were out there, that top lot was even where it is now, which is more into the front of the park.
They're gonna watch the about also in Thorndale here, with the Little League field there, it has a sign that says park at your own risk. And I know a friend who parked there, and just as she's leaving the game, smashed the windshield.
What about Parks and Recs? I brought this up at the meeting. Being involved with all these new developments that are saying, oh yeah, we're gonna put this basketball court in the top lot and a walking trail. They never do, and then they move on to the next phase. Why can't Parks and Rec be allowed to go out at least, not be like, you know, and I know you got an engineer that does it, but have them go out there and say, oh no, you can't go on to phase 2. You didn't finish phase 1. You promised this, this, and this. When you deliver up on this, I'll give you the money to go on to the next phase.
They have the option to pay money to get out of it. not to-
Right, and I understand that, but why can't we take that away from them?
Well, recent developments that's coming up, past developments is, wasn't done.
Yeah.
Past, and so we have, 3 developments in works right now. We got Honeybrook Estates, we got the new one that's proposed, and we're finishing up on Chestnut
So
Ridge.
Chestnut Ridge, Sweetwater Farms, and that's the only 2 that's currently, that are
The
in
Sweetwater
development.
Farms, Honeybrook Estates, same.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we only have 2 developments that are currently in construction at this point,
Yeah.
or anything in front of any of the boards.
And then we heard they could use some help of that Brandon Terrace, but that's private property. We can't do anything with that.
What is private property?
Brandon Terrace.
Oh, okay.
If you notice, they leveled it, and they're going to put in some new,
Yeah, 120 some new homes.
what is the number, 113, 112?
I don't have that specific number, I'm sorry.
And these new developers that are coming in, do they have plans for a park area in their development?
Well, when they first come in, that's part of it.
Right here, she's the one that asked.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Well, Brandywine Terrace is a private
Yeah.
community, so what facilities they have in their community are not for the public.
Okay.
D.R. Horton is proposing donating land, at least that was the discussion, to the township, to Village Park.
Ain't happening.
But, you can suggest that when they come in. I mean, it just depends on how the development's set up. Like, my development's private, so it's not for the community. I live down off of 322
Okay.
Village Street, so it's private. So the facilities that are within my development are not for the public, they're for the residents that live there. So it depends on how your development is set up. If your stuff's gonna be dedicated, there are some that aren't, there are some that are, so.
So like Keystone will have private.
Keystones are
Private.
private. Yes.
Well, what about Chestnut Ridge? Was that supposed to be public or private?
Chestnut Ridge, I'm not sure, I don't remember because that plan actually has been in the works for many, many years.
For our understanding, it was supposed to be public, and now it's supposedly private. The builder's agreement said that there was an option for the township to take ownership
Of what?
of the
trails.
the trails
Then
and the
it's
recreational
recreational.
area, both. There was an option for the township to take
Because there
ownership
is
of
now a
both.
basketball court there, there's a tot lot, I mean, it's a perfect opportunity for the township to have a basketball court in an area where there isn't any.
I mean, that's up to the township if they wanna take their
It's
ownership of
too
it.
late.
You just put it in.
They better roll over and die, yeah.
No, I mean, we've asked that question and we didn't get an answer. So I don't think any intention is, the township solicitor said it was too early to have that discussion. But it seems like once the
I
development's
know
done,
they were
then it's
talking
too
about
late.
the trails because there was a committee that talked about doing the trails. So I know that the trails in Chestnut Ridge had come up because they were talking about were there any other trails that would be close that they could link to it. And they wanted to leave the option open so that if there were, that if the townships wanted to acquire the trails, then, or an easement on the trails, then they could. But, you know, that was a discussion that happened like 2 years ago when the trail, you know, people were really talking about linking trails, this coming this way.
Yeah, there was a, after a few years ago, where a trail would connect us all the way down to Delaware County, go right across the county.
And that's when that discussion was taking place, because that's when that plan came in to get reviewed. So that's why they were talking about those trails at that particular point in time, because there was that committee before the trail.
So what is the plan with
Yeah,
the other
there's-
areas, like, that people are asking about, the tot lots and all that? Is the plan just not to have a plan?
Well, for Chestnut Ridge or for this trail,
For
the
the-
county trail?
For Chestnut Ridge, and all those, you know, the basketball courts and the tot lots and so forth, what is the plan for that?
Yeah, the last update that I know of, the trail is still under discussion, I guess, whether it is going to get moved or, am I speaking out turn on that? Is that,
The trail's not being moved.
it's not being moved, yeah.
No, my understanding is that the trail is offered up for dedication.
Yeah.
That when this plan was approved for Chestnut Ridge, that the board either accepted fee in lieu or permitted the builder to turn over the active open space to the HOA. And that, if I read the documents correctly, it says that if the developer or the HOA wants to give up, offer for dedication those parts, but it's not up for us to take, only the trail system. From my understanding, talking with Mike Runner, is that's the only thing has an open offer of dedication.
Because we did have different discussions at different times on what was going to be there, what would be there, and I think similar to what happened in Village Green, certain things were going to be there, and things changed as they went along.
So is it my understanding that Chestnut Ridge is now no longer planning to have trails or to offer them to the public?
Well, that's what's the
But
latest.
they're having trails, they're private.
So there's a trail
So it'll be
system
private.
going in. There is a ongoing offer of dedication to the township. So if the township accepts that, then we take all responsibility for maintenance, upkeep, and those types of activities. Again, my understanding from before me, that John had noted, is that other developments were looking at having a integrated trail system that connects multiple developments, and then now that seems not really to be a reality, just based upon those locations, that, you know, taking on that trail system that goes nowhere and comes nowhere and is just within that community center, you know, that development may or may not be a good opportunity, or might be an expense that's gonna cost the township and give little return on investment back to the community, if that trail system only goes through that neighborhood.
Yeah, part of the failure in that grand scheme they had was that there was some properties that they couldn't get to purchase on. There was disputes over ownership, and there were certain points where they would get to a point and then they couldn't go further until they passed another couple acres, and then they could continue the trail. They couldn't do that. So that was being driven by Grand Lake Conservancy, and I think Chester County was involved in that. Chip, did that ever come across in any of the land presentations?
The problem is, though, that area of the township is getting hammered with developments.
Yeah.
And it's now at the point where it's not even safe for us to walk our dogs or for kids to ride bikes out there. So the only people that are gonna have a safe area to walk on are the people that live in Chestnut Ridge. The rest of us are gonna get mowed down by cars going 60 miles an hour on Grayson Road. So it,
So the township might want to consider the cost of residents around that development being able to use that trail.
I guess the process of dedicating the trail, we have to go through Park and Rec, and at that point, you know, we would have to consider what, you know, is it advantageous or can we take responsibility? There's just limited personnel that we have right now. For us to start, you know, maintaining some trails, that's going to involve some additional personnel. If that's be the case, we have to consider that.
Okay, about the limited personnel, I can go up and speak here if I have to.
Sure.
My name's Jason Williams, I live at 3561 Horseshoe Pike. And this is a little off topic, but you say we're short on people. Where about 2 years ago, I saw there was an open position for auditor here, wrote my name in.
Yeah.
Turned out nobody else had done that. I got offered the position, paid the fees, had everything notarized for Chester County, submitted all the paperwork here, never heard anything again. So, I mean, it's just an auditor. I know that's not a huge position. I'm pretty sure I could bet that my paperwork and my application went in the trash. So, say someone's here to try to step up and do something and they got pushed away. I never heard anything, never got response. If someone was to do this again, is there anyone who can reach out to, or is it all, are we just gonna end up in the, is our work gonna end up in the trash again? Probably because there was someone in favor to take that position.
So the elected auditor, they serve one purpose in this township,
Yeah.
okay? So if you have a board of supervisor who's also an employee, it's that independent elected board of auditors that set their salary. That's
Okay.
the only responsibility for that position.
Okay. So apparently I couldn't do that either.
But we don't have any employees that are that are board of supervisors.
Okay, so then why was it open then?
It's a position that's mandated that we have those positions filled.
I'm not sure if I understood that.
So the township has to have elected boards,
Yeah.
your position, the auditor
Yeah.
position. And the sole responsibility is to set the pay scale for an employee who's also a board of supervisor, because legally, the board of supervisors sets the budget, which includes payroll. But because they're a board of supervisor, they can't give themselves a salary.
Yeah.
So it goes to this board of 3 auditors to have a discussion and set that salary for that employee. But since nobody in Honeybrook Township currently is a board of supervisor and a township employee, you're appointed to this position. Should that come up where a supervisor becomes a road department member, then you would be notified that they needed your service, you would meet, and you would set the salary.
Okay, so how come I just didn't hear anything at all then? So,
You got something from the county, right?
Yeah.
So the county gave you your notice that you were appointed to the
Yeah.
position. I mean, that's your notice that you were elected.
So apparently, the
So if John.
responsibility is not provided, like what that entails. I wasn't aware of that limitation.
no, I looked into what it said it was gonna do. If it was something that was a full-time, I wouldn't have made the,
Look, this comes up from election to election.
yeah.
I got elected one time to be the auditor or one of them, I just called up Chester County and said, I'm not even running. So they said, I said, you know, don't accept it. But there's also some other positions, I think there's like a sheriff position.
Constable.
Constable.
So someone got written in for judge of elections and constable. They can only pick one because
Yeah.
the constable legally has one obligation, is to provide the security on the day of election at the polling place within the township. That's it. So he had to pick one or the other because he can't do both. So he's like, no, I'm gonna pick judge of election. So I don't believe we have a constable.
Okay.
But the reality is, if he took that position of constable, he would have paid his fees through the county, got notice that he'd been, won this position and taken that. And then he would work with the judge of elections to establish security. That, elections don't fall within the jurisdiction of the township.
Okay.
We just provide Chester County voter services a polling location. We let them bring in their items, but on election day, the township staff has nothing legally to do with election day. We just open up the doors and we do our work over there. We don't have anything to do with traffic, elections, parking, assisting people. That's all the judge's election and the constable.
Okay, so it sounds like it shouldn't even bother us, but,
It's a position that has a purpose should the need arise. And I will tell you that our Director of Public Works, who has been here for 47 years, was a township manager for 25 years. So for 25 years, that elected auditor position actually had a function because he was an employee and a supervisor. So it's a position that may not always be in use, but the Commonwealth says we must have those elections and we should offer those appointments in case that position happens.
In our positions, like when you see in January, the reorg, we have a vacancy board position. And only one time in the past 12 years has that actually come up, where that person was called in. So it's like, in that event, when there was a vacancy on the board of supervisors. So Tracy and I agreed to one candidate, and she decided to go with another candidate. So we were at deadlock. So the thing had to go to a vacancy board hearing, and that's where the decision would be decided who would be fill that position. And if that gets deadlocked, then it goes to the county to resolve it. But there again, I mean, it's a position that I think we still fill it, but it's rarely ever need anybody to do anything within that position.
So the Commonwealth mandates what positions have to be open for election. And it's not that nobody didn't want to use you, it's that at this point, there's no board who's an employee, so there's nothing for that position to do currently, but we have to fill it in case someone decides to take a job and is also running as a board member.
Is that explanation?
well, okay, because I could have heard something from someone, just the.
Well, did you run or get written in?
I got written in, so.
And again, so you have to understand the township side administration has nothing to do with elections. We don't know who's running if someone writes them in. The county notifies us that the county tells us, the Board of Elections tells us who's been elected to the various positions. So we get notified when you get notified.
Okay. You get a certificate from the county saying that based on the results of the selection, you have been elected to such and such.
Yeah, I got that, yeah.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, the township administration has nothing to do with your position that you were elected to.
Okay.
And again, that's unfortunate when people get elected to positions. The gentleman who got elected to, two positions which contradicted each other, he called up and looked for some input, and I just directed him to what the legal statements are of those positions within our second-class township codes. We don't make those up. That's a position that's elected based upon what the Commonwealth says second-class townships have to have as elected officials.
Well, then, shouldn't you have notified, if he got something notified from the county,
Yeah.
shouldn't he have gotten something notified from the
We get notified by the county saying that he's been appointed, but no paperwork comes from us because we don't have any oversight of him.
It's just, keep
And then in the event that one of us became an employee, and then we'd call you in. And I'm sure you got that point, but that's where, in some municipalities, maybe they would take the time and acknowledge or something like that. As far as I know, the time that I've been here, and seen players going out acknowledging you've been elected, that's coming straight from the county.
Okay, so, yeah, like I said, there's nothing on there's just no recognition at all, so, if I had gotten, it's not much of an incentive to have people get involved here.
So, in most cases, when people get their names written in, they just call voter services and number of that issue. It's unfortunate. I mean, it appears on the ballot, and we go through this from time to time, from election to election. Some people just writing in people's names, and sometimes you get 10 votes and you're in.
That's kind of what happened.
Someone from a township in the next county over got elected to 5 board positions. 5 separate board positions of a seven-member board. So, you know, he got notified by that county.
Well, I wasn't expecting to hear anything, and now I know not to, so, yeah. Okay.
I lived in New Jersey, and I think Pennsylvania's election laws, they're not easy to follow. Not that New Jersey is that much better.
With the increased demands being presented by the traffic and the increase in traffic that we expect to see, the one area that concerns me the most, because I live out that way, is heading out to Chestnut to 322. Has that been discussed as far as what the plans are? Because as you know, if you've ever tried pulling out on the 322 there to make a left turn, you have to kind of be ready to roll at full throttle. And if you're in a lower car, which I have both, becomes more difficult. If you're in a truck, it's a little easier visibility-wise.
I know it doesn't help. Sometimes if I gotta go left, I'll go right, turn into Mill Street, turn around. Sorry to say that. But you know, you're doing the roundabout because there's times you can never get out. If they that left. As far as, you know, the future of where that's going right now, there's no immediate plans for that intersection. There were plans at one point, and PennDOT said that, you know, it was on their list, but right now it's not even on the list. So it's something that we have to step up and say that based on some of the current PennDOT studies, and when they see the increase, these volume studies that will be coming across for these new developments, they're going to say, yeah, we have to address that intersection sooner than later. Because it's going to get to a point where you're going to have some very serious accidents there.
PennDOT, you can go to the PennDOT site and make a suggestion or a claim that something needs to be looked. I've done it. I've never heard back from them. I know some of my neighbors have done it too. And what did you say? They said, Lisa? I haven't gotten anywhere. So I mean.
Well, I had a contact at PennDOT, her name was Robin, and I was dealing with her this past spring. I kept asking her, when's Route 10 get it done? What's happening? It's coming up, it's coming up. I said, well, could you tell us when it would happen? She said, well, it could be June, no later than July. And then finally, one day I was ready to pull out on Route 10, and I'm like, oh, we're working on it. That's PennDOT. And PennDOT was like, as soon as they get done with that project over there, then they move their equipment over here. And it's very poorly done, because, you know, I'm following up with the same thing you do, we're following up with them, and PennDOT has got a lot on their hands.
I mean, it's really going to be a massive number of people who just need to complain about it, because it's going to be one of our kids or one of our loved ones that's going to get killed going out to 322. It's the traffic on 322 is horrendous. Like people are flying down that road.
Yeah. I asked someone a few years ago, I said about 5 years ago, get a petition going. And I said, bring it in, I'll sign it. And I never heard from her, but that's one way of getting things done. You know, and you present that to the state rep, the state senator, and saying this is something we need, we desperately need. I'm in touch with Tim Hennessy, who is still our state rep until the end of this month, in the end of November. He's the chairman of the Transportation Committee. So that's where a lot of the projects are targeted.
Is that right?
Well, look at Pennsylvania. When you look at the ranking, a few years ago I saw the ranking. Pennsylvania was third from last in infrastructure, bridges and roads. Only Mississippi and Louisiana were worse than Pennsylvania. We had thousands of bridges across Pennsylvania that should be condemned. They shouldn't be in use. We saw a few years ago it happened down here on Icedale Road. The one-lane bridge was shut down. All the traffic's coming into Huntingford Township onto the Cadell Road, and then when it floods out, they're landlocked. We couldn't even get emergency vehicles in there. We had an emergency meeting with West Brandywine on how we're going to respond to that.
Can I just say something about
Go
the
ahead.
planning commission when we were talking about the zoning, because I kind of feel like they're getting through that a little bit.
Okay.
Well, I just, for example, So if we're speaking about roads, you know, when a plan comes into the township and it gets looked at, there are many entities that review the plan. It'll go to Chester County Planning Commission, PennDOT, there'll be a traffic study. And there's many elements that go into a plan review that are not just by the township, they're by several entities. And so PennDOT, if you're speaking about Chestnut Tree and 322, you know, there's trips per house depending on what type of development you have, blah, blah. And that's how they figure out the traffic study and how much does this road warrant that it needs to be upgraded? Do we need to have a light? I mean, they determine all of it. The township has no say in that intersection. Chestnut Tree is a state road and so is 322. So the township has nothing to do with that. Just so not be the township about the traffic.
But the township can reach out to our representatives and encourage them to look at that and.
Oh, you can,
Yeah.
but good luck, just so you know, because I work for a municipality and did the same thing, and they don't even budget with municipalities either, so just so you know.
So if the
They're their
township,
thing.
if the township's allowing a developer to come in and build like 400 homes in one spot and 200 in another on the same road, can't they require the builders to do an upgrade on?
The builders do. So the development, if a development comes in and they determine that the road needs to be upgraded, the builder has to upgrade whatever PennDOT says that they need to do. Let's just say they're doing a turning lane. The developer would have to put that turning lane in.
Okay.
That type of thing, so. But as far as
Is
the,
it a wall in that corner?
as far as, you know, the planning commission goes, you know, the planning, I think people think that the planning commission, the Parks and Rec, you know, land preservation, they make decisions, and they don't. They are advisory boards only. So they review the plans, and they, you know, look at the land preservation, what you want to preserve, they present that to the board. The board makes the decisions. So whenever decisions are made, it is not by the planning commission, it's not by Parks and Rec or land preservation, it is by the board of supervisors. They are only advisory boards. The only board that is not an advisory board, other than the board of supervisors, is the zoning hearing board.
Nobody, I didn't
So-
think that they did make decisions.
No, but some people think that like the planning commission don't let they don't make decisions. They
Yeah, 'cause-
only make,
Yeah.
they make a recommendation to the board of supervisors. So if the planning commission says, hey, we don't think you should have that development at 300 houses, okay, can we make that recommendation to the board? The board decides.
Yeah.
We don't decide.
I know there've been a couple things.
So I know that there are things that the planning commission has not recommended to the board, and they have went ahead with what we didn't want, that we did not recommend this, and they went ahead with it.
Yeah,
So I'm just saying, just so everyone knows, like, we don't make the decisions. We make, you know, we present it, and then, you know, they make the decisions on things. Because there are several things that the zoning hearing board has made a decision on that I do not agree with whatsoever.
I know,
I will tell you now, right now, the expansion of the trailer park and all those trailers and steep slopes, absolutely not, should never have been approved, in my opinion.
You weren't the only one on the,
No.
on that committee who
So-
said they shouldn't do it.
No,
So
so
for
I'm
some
just.
reason, they don't listen to you guys sometimes.
Well,
And what can you
that's,
do with the
the problem is
Yeah,
that
plan.
you need two votes against the material. So in the case of that one situation, the vote was 2-1. And
Rates would be 6 to 7.
at that point, I got pushback from the planning commission. They said, if you're not going to listen to us, why should we bother making recommendations? But in that case, you know, it's not that we're ignoring them. I look at what the planning commission advises. There's times when we're in these meetings, and I would turn to Mike Reiner and say, can you explain, you know, before we make a decision, so we understand, you know, the rationale behind that decision, this planning recommendation.
And we have people on the planning commission, Gary and myself, review every single plan that comes through. And I've been accused of beating applicants up for my questions that I ask. Because I worked for a municipality for many years, and I understand the process. I also understand what voters try to get away with. I work with them every day. So I get that. So, which is why I'm a little tough, quote, tough on them. I've been accused of not being very nice to them, whatever. Like, I will tell you right now, whenever it comes to a trail being put in a development, I don't even let them finish.
Yeah.
No, because, you know, what happened in my development was ridiculous. So, the planning commission doesn't just roll over and play dead. I don't. I can tell you that. You can watch the films, but I do not do that. So I'm gonna treat them like, you know, they're a builder, and I don't trust builders, let's just be honest. I don't like them, and I don't trust them, and so I am, would you agree, a little scared at the meeting, is a little tough on the builders, but that's.
I love it.
But that's just,
I mean, we have to be, otherwise,
but people need to understand that, you know, the zoning, so you're talking about the zoning, you know, we spent 2 years redoing the zoning, there was a zoning task force. And your zoning has to match your comp plan. So you have to look at your comp plan and see what your comp plan says. So if your comp plan says that we want to have like, you know, ag in this area, your zoning needs to align with what that says. So a lot of people should really look at the comp plan and see what the comp plan says. As far as the zoning changes that you're talking about, you know, I don't remember in the 2007 zoning map having low-density residential.
It's in the comprehensive
Mostly
development
what was along 322 was commercial.
In the
Tons of
comprehensive
commercial.
development plan, there is a zoning map, and it shows that particular plot of land where D.R. Horton wants to develop.
But
It
was
was
that the
low
zoning
density.
map that was adopted? Because you have to look at the zoning map that was adopted. And the zoning map that was adopted from 2007 has almost all commercial. I know it because it was the Rockland Station overlay. There was a Rockland Station overlay that was put, and they removed that in 2015. So what you're looking at was not an adopted
Well, why would they
zoning
have it
map,
in the comprehensive
because they
development plan?
have different things of what they might want to do. So the actual official zoning map is here from 2007.
That's the same one up there?
No, that's
That's not the recent.
2015.
Okay.
So depending on where you're at, okay, it has, the D.R. Horton area was mixed residential. And then there's commercial all along here and all along here.
I'll have to look and
So-
see what page it's on, but it is in the comprehensive.
So
development
this
plan.
is
That's
the
what it is.
official adopted map that the zoning goes by.
and it's
So,
also-
and that was from 2007, and that had the Rockland Station overlay, which they removed in 2015. So a lot of those commercial properties went to mixed-use residential.
I'm just saying, there had to have been, if that was
Farmhouse.
on there, whether it was a proposed map or whatever, someone had to have thought, hey, low density might be a better idea for an area that is a massive wetland and a floodplain.
It might be, but for the Rockland Station overlay, it wasn't. What they wanted for the Rockland Station overlay was they wanted to put a light at 322 and Chestnut Tree, a light at Kukla and 322, a light at Burdell and 322. And what they wanted to do was have massive amounts of stores and shopping along 322, and the minute you pull off of 322, you go a block and it's, oh, it's rural again. If you would have saw that, I mean, they had things on there that I lived on in North Burdell. We built a house there. I can tell you right now, those people, there is no way they want houses on there. They didn't like it when our house was built there. But there was no way they were gonna allow a street to cut through over to Cuba, and there was gonna be townhouses on this lady's property that never gonna happen. So that was unrealistic. But that was the vision that they had, that board and that planning commission at the time. So these things change depending on who was on your board and who is sitting at the board of supervisors. You know, a lot of it, because it's what your vision is for the next 10 years. So as you can see, the vision of this planning commission as opposed to the vision from planning commission 15 years ago was very different. So that's why it's important to know who's on your boards, and it's very important for your elected officials to get out there and vote. Because they make the decisions.
And when we went through that exercise, when they had the traditional labor development, that was, caused a lot of angst because there were people there that felt they were going to get pushed out. This was going to be gentrification. And what changed everything was the housing market collapsed. So then in 2015, I believe, we did the comp plan again. I did talk to a lot of people in the community. I said, this is the time for you to look at you know, the vision of where the township's gonna be over the next 10 years. A lot of people didn't show up, but the one thing that I didn't want was supervisors on that comp plan task force. I attended some of the meetings sitting as a guest in the audience because I felt I wanted this, you know, to come from the residents. But the residents weren't showing up, so we did have supervisors on, and they were directing some of it. But part of it too is, you know, there was some easing of some of that development plan because the old plan, all of our development would have been focused, commercial on that, in this little village right by 322.
That was the plan.
That was the plan.
That was the plan.
And then we gave some easing to move some of that development around surrounding Honeybrook Borough, because now we're on friendly terms with them. We did a comp plan together with them. So it's not a perfect plan because, yeah, you know, the bulk of the development is in that section of the township. And if you look at the map behind me, you see all that green area. That's where, you know, most of the preservation is going to be done for farmland, so that there's a future for farmland.
What's interesting about that comprehensive development plan is, you know, in the special exception criteria, it said that this, whatever special exception that was being put forward would have to be in alignment with the comprehensive development plan. That comprehensive development plan read that high-density housing, townhomes, row homes, et cetera, were not appropriate for the township, but would be more appropriate for the borough. But that seemed to have been ignored in the zoning hearing. So my question is, you guys spent a lot of time and money and effort in putting this comprehensive development plan together. I was just baffled as to why that wasn't part of their evaluation.
Well, that land has been zoned for that use, and it's up to the person that owns the land, you know, to decide, you know, who we want to sell.
But the zoning board could have said high-density housing wasn't appropriate, lower density housing was appropriate. Yeah, you can't stop development, that's not what we were saying, but it was just the high-density housing.
Well,
Well, I will be honest, I'm surprised that this is coming up because there were other plans put forward to the planning commission within the last couple of years for that exact property where the townhouses are going, and it was way more than 143 houses. It was, one of them was 250, 255, something like that.
And they went through special
No,
exceptions?
they were bringing it in because they were under the old zoning because of, once you get your application in, you're under that, even if it changes, you had to have your application in first. But I'm just saying, like, all people were, everybody came in and said anything about it, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, 150 houses, hold on.
Yeah, this is really starting to really piss me off about the point of, you know, where were you 10 years ago? Where were you 5 years ago? Well, where were you?
This was just 2 years ago.
I'm just saying, I naively thought the people of my community would look after my community.
Well, that's why
And
the
keep it there,
250 are not
okay?
there, Karen. That's why the 250
Okay,
aren't
but
there.
I'm just saying, these comments of, you know, well, where were you 10 years ago? Where were you? You know, do you have any more insults on us? We're here now. I care.
The insults are not directed.
It's not.
and they're
I feel
necessarily-
very offended.
Karen, slow down a second.
It's-
What we can't satisfy everybody, and the problem, of course, when these plans are put together, they are put out there public. I don't go to the Daily Local and read those notices, and that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. And yeah, you know, we have lives. I mean, when I talk to people about, you know, the responsibility to the government and stuff like that, first off, you got responsibilities to your family. You got to take care of your family first. Then you've got a job to take care of. Then you're a good parishioner. You're a good volunteer, and then maybe you have time, you know, to be a good citizen. And that's usually the order. And it's not because you're not doing the job. We're inundated, all of us. We're all getting hit from so many different directions. We're getting information. Sometimes we're not even sure if the information is that great. And when you read some of these documents that are prepared for us, the comp plan, the land preservation document, they're not they're not the best. Like when we did the land preservation plan, when I was on that committee, I tore it out maybe about 15 pages. You know, I said, no, you know, because it was being directed by an outside consultant, all right? So, you know, there was only 5 of us who were working on that, and we put together, you know, a solid plan, but we didn't just take what was given to us, you know? And so we're doing our best to look out for the community because we do live here. But, you know, unfortunately, you got a situation right now, and, you know, we can't change or criticize the current development, the way it's going. It's got to play itself out. But there is another comp plan coming up in a few years, and, you know, if you do have the time, you know, or you just, you know, write to the, you know, the township, or just give me a call or somebody, and we'll keep at it. But same thing with the land preservation document, that's coming up. It's got to be, you know, we'll be looking at that and making sure that it reflects, you know, what you think is in the best direction, and hopefully is in line with what you want to see.
And my point wasn't, they didn't do anything. My point was is that 143 didn't sound as bad as what we were seeing previously, like 250. I mean, and those things were ugly as sin, those houses. I mean, I beat that guy to death.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that's why when we saw 143, we were like, oh my God, this is so much better than every other plan that he was bringing in.
Oh,
So
one thing that you realize, when we had that old zoning map and all that, that's in 2007. There was no land preservation was just starting. There was no park and rec. I mean, we made some progress here. You know, there were opportunities for us to look at some land back in the day. Lost out. I was sitting out here, you know, in 2005 in the audience when someone came in and said, I've got property on Nicedale Road. Would the township be interested? And the township said, no, you don't have a park and rec. Looking back now, so that would have been, you know, wonderful for us to work with now, because I've, you know, been working with Kevin for years. We've walked the woods, we've been out there looking at land and stuff, and it's, you know, just couldn't find it.
and I'm directly affected by all these developments.
No, I know you
I'm
are.
right there.
Yeah.
So trust me, I don't want the traffic either. But I also know that the township, if it is a use by right, they can't tell them no. The only way to keep the development down is to preserve the land. Really, is really the only, is what the option you have.
But they have to be able to look at the impact on each particular land as well. And in this case with D.R. Horton, that is the most dangerous piece of land to put high-density housing on because of the pipelines, the high-quality waterways, the extensive wetlands. It is just that much. I know it might not sound like a lot to you, but it's still.
I'm not saying it doesn't sound a lot, but there are entities in place that will review those things. So there will be entities that will look at the wetlands. I mean, you know, it's not like we're just gonna do what we wanna do. There's gonna be precautions that have to take place. There'll be easements on the property. I mean, there's things that I know the one gentleman who owns the land. I'm friends with his grandson. And, you know, they tried, he didn't want to preserve it. So you can't force people to preserve something they don't want to, they want to sell it.
Yeah.
That's their right.
And Heimbrook Estates, what is that called now?
Sweetwater Farm.
Sweetwater Falls. I mean, that farm apparently offered it to other farmers and all that, got no takers. So finally some, you know, investor came along and said, hey, this would be a great place to throw some townhouses. And they went, that sat for a few years, going back and forth. The township rezoned, because it was rezoned, we ended up in court.
Yeah, so that decision is a legal decision that supersedes everything.
I just think some of these things, like the special exception criteria I mentioned before you came in, you know, the zoning board had said that, you know, that was something that they struggled with because it was so poorly written, it was so broad. They struggled with making that decision and, you know, including in there things like it has to be in alignment with a comprehensive development plan. If we're not gonna do that, then that needs to be taken out. So, you know, if we're gonna have things like that in there, we need to make sure they're all in alignment and in agreement that those are gonna be used. Because it doesn't seem like those criteria were followed the way we were presented, that they should be followed. Because the zoning board said like even one criteria wasn't met, that was grounds for denial, which comprehensive development plan was one criteria, so it should have been means for denial. So
There was a second criteria that it had to be something that was good for the community.
Yeah.
And
But
this building has never been as full as it was during those hearings for that special exemption. And people came back 3 weeks, I think it was 4 weeks, because the one time it wasn't canceled. Yeah, Karen was here for all of them too. And that board had 2 different outs. There, the comp plan, and like, as far as I'm concerned, that was a totally subjective thing. They could have said, we don't feel this is good for the community, special exemption denied.
But the problem was that they said, the zoning board said, it was too broad, because what's good for the community wasn't clearly stated.
Well, that's why we have a board, for them to make that decision. That's why it's not just, so personally, I'm really disappointed in that board. Because what they've done is they've basically kicked the issue back down to the planning commission and the supervisors. And now, we're gonna need our supervisors to stand up for us against these big developers who are trying to push their way into our community.
Well, the planning commission did not make a recommendation on different things that went to the zoning board, and they still granted it, so just so everyone's aware.
Well, that's why I didn't say it's up to you guys. So I said it's gonna be up to our supervisors, and it's gonna be up to all of us, and all of our friends, and all of our neighbors, to call up our supervisors and say, no D.R. Horton.
But the township solicitor actually said the board wanted to deny it, but he overturned their decision and decided
Yes,
to
he should be
approve
fired.
it because, well, it's.
And
that's-
that was-
Why hasn't he been fired?
What?
Why hasn't he been fired?
Why did he cave to, he was being all buddy-buddy with the D.R. Horton lawyer.
Oh, yeah, they're friends.
Another thing that really irritates me personally about this, I was a party to that hearing. I was entitled to get a notice of what was decided. I have never received that, and now the statute of limitations has run out, and I cannot appeal that decision. So I don't know what that means for anything else on that, but that was kind of heartbreaking to find out a little bit too late.
Well, just remember that the board appoints the members to be on the zoning hearing board.
Yep.
So,
The zoning
so
hearing-
remember that.
I spoke with every person on that board, and I didn't hear anybody who was favorable toward D.R. Horton.
So they were favorable toward bringing my terrace being, expanded. So,
Yep.
So do we have any impact on the township solicitors? Because I just don't think, we're paying their salary, and this guy did not serve the township's best interest. We had the developer who was, I think, bullying some of the members of the community and just being completely inappropriate, and it was up to him to stop that.
Oh, but it's okay for him, sit down, shut up, or I'll be escorted back. Now, you don't talk to a community member that way, you know? Come on. And yet he still has a job?
Where can we find out, where the current, like, is there a place to find out where, like, say you voted for certain things?
Yeah.
Like what each board,
well, you would look in the board minutes that are online.
okay.
So
you
even
can see
if you can't, even if you can't make it, and I tell people that, like, I understand everyone's busy, I'm busy too, I get it. But you can always follow what's going on with the township by looking at the meeting minutes online. You don't have to.
You'll see,
And everything's on YouTube.
But
There's also one in the back
They're
there.
on YouTube.
yeah, you do read, it will say, this person said yes, that was the person said yes, and that person said no. So on that first recommendation from the parks, from the planning commission, steep slopes and all that, I supported the planning commission recommendation.
And the 2 others did.
Correct. So it went through. So then when the final plan came in, it's like, all right, I'm down 2 votes. So let's, try to work out the best we can. So the one thing that I really push for is the minimum amount of units that could be put in there. And, they were talking 140 and this and that, and we finally got it down to about 112, 113. But the one thing that I didn't appreciate is when I discussed it, I was told, well, that's the best deal we can work. And I didn't, but comes down to a
Would have
vote.
been, you would have denied to approach in steep slopes like you're not supposed to in the first place, and then they wouldn't have another 70.
Yeah, because that was the main purpose of getting that additional units in there.
Keystone the same way, it goes down steep hill.
And there have been votes where we haven't agreed on, and,
Then, you know, there's 3 board members, but there can be up to 5, correct?
usually when you approach 10,000, yeah, problem with, it's been tough enough to get 3 people to show up, and, and sometimes 5 votes can be just as difficult as 3. You know, it just depends on who's serving on the board. You heard the recommendation I made this past month to say we should be reviewing, you know, our vendors at least every 3 years. We haven't done that. Yeah, I talked to other municipalities. Said, sure.
Are the solicitors part of those vendors?
Vendors are
Considered a vendor?
the engineering,
Yeah.
legal, the accounting. Yeah, that's the stuff. Yeah.
And can the public have input into who you're using?
No, it's really comes down to like the way we selected our solicitor a few years ago. We put out the RFP and then we get a response. And then after about 20-some responses, we sat down and narrowed it down to 5 to interview. Then we met in this room, interviewed, and I went through a checklist, ranked them, and then, you know, that's how we ended up. But, you know, as far as the detail in the voting and stuff, I can't get into that level, but it went back and forth several times, you know.
So at what point can a solicitor be fired?
I think we could, at any given point, that's the point.
The zoning hearing board appoints their solicitor, the township board of supervisors have no insight on that.
Not the zoning for our township.
Well,
Can we?
they're not township employees, they are contracted professionals that we retain their service.
What's that for? A recall?
So
Well, for example, for a recall for a supervisor, it's really very difficult. You'd have to have like a felony or something in the way it's written. But if we have, feel that one of our solicitor, like a solicitor or something, is not up to the job, do we have to wait till the end of the
They are,
term?
any township employee works at the pleasure of the board.
Right. So
Here,
that-
they're at-will employees, but again, engineering, any contracted services, it's a contract.
Yeah.
We don't have any yearly contract, we just agree at the reorg meeting that they're gonna provide that service. If the township is ever unhappy and the board elects to change anything, including their manager, they can do that at their own will, without any public input and without reason.
There have been times when we didn't agree in January, and we went through a list and said, okay, we approve 1 through 12, skip 13, 14, and 21 is approved, 13 will, you have to wait. So that way we can, you know, start the new year in January with a list of appointees and something that's, when we have a problem with, we can postpone the decision.
So you do it
Was that solicitor's job, send out the notices at the result of that hearing?
So again, the township solicitor reports to the board and myself.
Okay.
The zoning hearing board solicitor reports to the zoning hearing board.
Okay.
They don't,
So it's,
he does not have to respond to me. They will. I mean, I'm not saying they don't have to, but the zoning hearing board members appoint the zoning hearing board solicitor. They're the one organization where I can clearly say, I don't know
okay.
his legal obligations. It is clearly spelled out in the second class code, the NPC. And again, you can go onto the DCED library and pick out the zoning hearing board packet, and it clearly shows you what the responsibilities of that solicitor are.
Yeah.
There are legal
Yeah.
items that solicitor has to do. I just, as your manager, I can't tell you.
Okay.
I can
Yeah.
quote them to you, I'm sorry. I
All
can
right, yeah,
look into that.
Oh, I've looked into it, so it was his job then, and the job of that board to notify me and everybody else who was a party to that proceeding to the decision,
Okay.
and they didn't do
We
that.
have to
I
see
need
your
to-
ordinance
They had
says
45
too.
days.
Because your ordinance will have a section about zoning hearing board and their responsibilities and stuff, so you have to see what that says.
Yep, yeah, I've looked it up, and
I
I
didn't
was
get
45
anything
days
either.
out, and I was over 45 days, and I hadn't gotten any, I had to look at the township website to find out what happened.
So did he maybe think that because he handed the decision out at the last hearing that that sufficed? I don't know.
No, as everybody who was a party to the
Should have done
proceeding
that.
was entitled to written, was entitled to a written notice of what the decision was.
So because you didn't get a written notice, does that not apply to the,
I have no idea what, I know that an appeal to a zoning hearing board is supposed to be filed with the county authorities within 45 days.
but I mean, if you weren't notified what the result was within 45 days, how do you know what was, you know what I mean?
Yep, yeah,
Since
well,
you're
I
not
was
notified of
supposed to get a
anything.
letter, and then, yeah.
So they didn't follow the rules.
Well, for one thing, when you elect someone to the Board of Supervisors, the only qualifications that you're a resident for 1 year and you're registered to vote. So when I first inquired about this position, you know, the township manager at the time said, it's tougher to get a dog license than it is to get elected as supervisor. I mean, you got people coming in with, you know, the best of intentions, and it's not just in Honeybrook, across the state of Pennsylvania. And it's really up to the person to really, you know, learn the job, because, you know, there's opportunities. I've gone to like a zoning class and things like that. But one thing that's valuable, we have this organization called PSAS. They have a monthly magazine, and I've been involved with that. I've been quoted in that magazine. So it's like, but you got to be reading it. And sometimes when I come to these meetings, I'm bringing up ideas, and I like to think, wow, you know, this guy knows his stuff, but I'm getting it. It's out there. All you have to do is read this stuff and participate. Like with Icedale Road, that intersection. There was an identical situation in another municipality, and all they did is move the road over to higher ground. You know, that solved the whole problem, because when that road was built years ago, it was going from a farm to another farm. There might have been a tree there, so instead of going to the higher ground, they went to the lower ground. And the tree's long gone, but the road is still there. And now that we are in the 21st century, even though we still have horse and buggies on the road, a lot of these roads are really not suited for the traffic that we have, you know, especially the main corridor that we have, 322 and Route 10. And there was a plan years ago, and it sat on, you know, I did some research, and there was, back in the 20th century, it seems so far away now, that there was a road that was going to go down the county line, bypassing Route 10. Which would have been great, because if you ever come down Route 10 to Beaver Dam Road, you're coming off a curve, you're going downhill, and there have been some really bad accidents there, because I live right there. And it's the same thing as trying to get out on Chestnut Tree Road on 322. We have some of the most dangerous intersections in Chester County, if not in the state. But it's up to the state to make those changes, but when they're so far backed up, and look at what it takes, 10 years to get our Route 10 paved. And that might not have happened if I was in 2012, when I asked about it, they said, oh, it's going to be 2 or 3 years. I said, we can't wait that long. So in 2013, it got done. Because, you know, I was calling up PennDOT, just like this last time. But PennDOT, as you know, is not an easy entity to deal with. Yeah. So what I'm getting from out of this tonight is the fact that we do need better communication, you know, and we're trying our best reaching out. I mean, I did this when I first started years ago, but after about 4 or 5 meetings, I kept hearing the same thing, and it was time for me to say, stop saying we're looking into it and actually try looking into it. So we did several task force, and we were successful with a few of them, like the dog kennel task force. You know, we harmonized our ordinances with the state regulations. Because that made a big difference. Some of the kennel owners were saying, okay, the state tells us 4 feet, you tell us 6 feet. What are we supposed to do with that? So, but we can't help the dogs, because the welfare of the dogs is not our responsibility. We did what we could on our end as far as the property concerns with the dogs. And I still think there's a lot of problems out there that we still need to follow up on. But what I would like to see in 2023, for each meeting, have like a 10, 15-minute discussion at the board meeting, maybe at the end. I'm just proposing, and I have to check with my board to approve this, on some of the topics that we're hearing. Zoning, noise, or reaching out to our elected officials, whatever topics, come up with a list. So you can walk away with that information, know how to get things done, who to turn to. Because there are times people came to these meetings and they'll ask us something and we're like, we'd like to help you, but you're gonna have to talk to your congresswoman for that. It's not within our authority. So I know, having sat where you're sitting for several years, I mean, Chip and I live on the same block, and what happened when we first moved in, we had to wait 18 months to get our street dedicated, get our mailboxes. Had to go to the end of the street to get our mail. And all our mailboxes were all tied together at one point, because the street wasn't dedicated. We had FedEx came to us one time and said, we can't even find you on the map. You're not even showing up on GPS. So I made a call to Chester County, and then back at that time, we made a call to the post office. The postmaster said, you have your mail on Monday, delivered to your door. That's all it took, you know? And that's because, you know, we have a good block, we know each other, and we work through a lot of these things together. And Jeff here has been, you know, working on land preservation over 10 years, to his shame. We going back 2006 when we first started this thing. And you know, Kevin and several people have been on that park and recreation. We just celebrated 10 years of the park and recreation. Planning, we've had some ups and downs on some of the planning years ago. I feel confident we have some solid people on the planning commission that I can refer to, and I'm, you know, keeping me honest, you know. So that's where we are in a better shape today than when I first came on board. So I think that's a reflection of some of the things that, you know, maybe I had some ideas, but I also had a lot of people helping me accomplish those things. That's it.
Just real quick, so.
Yeah, but sorry, you had a question back there. Go ahead, Val. Go ahead, Val. Who?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, John, first I want to thank each of the board members who are here tonight. You're always coming to meetings, and we're really thankful for your input and what you're presenting always. John, do you feel like it's the heartbeat of the Board of Supervisors that they're hearing what the community is saying? What I see when I come is a very tense atmosphere. The workshops all got canceled, and now we've been presented with the town hall. Do you think that the Board of Supervisors will move forward with town halls, workshops, or will all those things just end up being 15 minutes of maybe questions and answers?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I feel that there's times when I'm spinning in the wind. And, but that's not answering your question. I mean, I am more than happy to continue doing these town hall meetings. Laura's doing a great job stepping up, getting to know what needs to be done in the township. So we have to give her, make sure she has a chance to understand what we're dealing with. And we do have a township manager. I said that we've accomplished more in 6 to 8 months than I've seen in the last 6 years.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
And again, Renee, you know, I think we spoke about this before. The workshop meetings, again, with the understanding, the caveat that prior to my coming on, literally were empty seats. And I'm not justifying the reasons for that, but the workshop meetings were essentially just to give more explanation to the board of what they were going to be voting on the following week, just to shorten up those meetings, right? So my understanding coming in is that there's some slow months, and typically in years past, they would cancel workshops because the agenda was light. Now, obviously, the board has heard, and I've seen that even at workshop meetings, there's residents that want to speak, so there's a benefit to have it, even though that wasn't the core method of having that workshop to begin with. But now that there are participants coming and asking questions and wanting their concerns heard, then we're more apt to not cancel a workshop meeting, right? So it wasn't to silence voices, there wasn't enough to justify bringing in supervisors and staff to have a 15-minute meeting and drive home, where the following week, adding 5 or 10 minutes wouldn't be detrimental to the well-being.
On that note, when I first started, they gave us a package on a Friday night, you know, all the stuff that would be coming up on the following Wednesday meeting. So by Sunday, I'm like, I'm wasting my time. I go through a red pen, making all the changes, all the corrections. And so the problem is, then you go to a meeting, you're prepared, but not everybody was prepared for the meeting. So this forced the three of us to be able to make sure that we at least talk through what the business would be, so that when we got to the meeting, we weren't sitting there asking questions and trying to understand. Otherwise, those meetings would go to 9, 10 o'clock, if that were the case. So that was an improvement, a step in the right direction. But to Warren's point, there's times when it has been slow, not very much business. So, but yes, good. I'm sorry, you did wait.
Yeah, I just want to make a general comment to all you guys who are here. We appreciate you being here. I want to echo Renee. It's nice to see people come out and actually listen. Most of this got people fired up. It was the DR Horton thing. You know, found out about it in the very, very early spring, and all of a sudden everybody shows up. I think it created a lot of tension. I don't think anybody sitting on the other side of that desk expected this room to be full. There was a lot of questions, a lot of heated exchanges going back and forth. I think people have been working very hard on this side of this desk to amp that down and try and get answers and try and get everything done civilized. So I think you can see that, and we also appreciate, though, that you guys on the other side of the desk have been lifting the efforts to get us at least educated, organized, and knowing what the heck is going on. I especially want to mention that last month, Warren, he had the engineer come out, saw us the next day. We got to talk to him and show him what we were talking about. He goes, and he was very good about this. Mike was very good about it. He goes, you know, I've driven by here. I never stopped the truck. I should have stopped the truck. And now I see the swamp you're talking about. You know, it's hundreds of feet of swamp. He's like, it's been there for 2.5 years. He sees it. He walks up the dam. He goes, I found a break. Didn't take him but 5 minutes to find out where the water was coming from. And he immediately tells the developer, you got to fix this. Because this is why the water is just constantly flowing down there. So that was good. We really appreciate that. He was nice enough to bring out maps and show us what's what, and also at least we had better understanding. That's positive. There's negatives. Some of the negatives are when we hear, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but you got to understand, that lights a fire under people. And you say, well, where were you 2 years ago? Nobody gets a local paper.
Yeah.
So nobody knows what's happening month to month to month, unless you're living on a website. You know, up until 2 years ago, I was working 90 hours a week. I'm not looking at the township website to see what you're doing. You know, I'm just trying to get to Sunday so I can have a day off. You know, now I got time, I'm looking. You know, it's one of those things, like there's been a lot of negatives out of this, a lot of positives. I think there's everybody in this room is going to say that DR Horton, that's a negative. And if this is not at least somewhat reined in, 140 townhomes ain't cutting it. You know, if there's a way to do this or a way to do this better in the future, that would at least be a positive. And what Val was mentioning, which is those exclusions, the exemptions list, yeah, you could drive a truck through most of those. They're so wide open. It needs to be tightened up. That would help if you had a group of people doing this. Canceling workshop meetings, that probably doesn't help very much because it frustrates people. Doing this is really good. You need to keep doing this because, and Warren, please take this the right way. When we're being told at a board meeting, no one can ask a question, it gets people heated. At least here, people can now at least ask questions, get answers, and understand. Now, I understand why you say what you said. I'm not telling you got to do about face, whatever, but just saying less information always heats people up.
Understood. And again, just to your point, it's standard throughout any township meeting. It's a business meeting, right? So those are standards that, this is just not in Honeybrook, right? So these standards of public comment, that has happened because of sunshine laws. Upon going through the court system and validating what these rules are, how we engage, how the municipalities are permitted to act.
No, I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying, you know, these are the things that he
absolutely.
what constitutes them. This is actually calming because people are feeling like they're being heard. And this young fellow over here, whose name I did not get, Jay, I like him. but because you're able to
fire most of the board.
you can talk, you feel like you're being heard a little bit. Yeah. When I have a lawyer telling me that somebody, a bob turtle expert who hunts bob turtles 24/7, 365, he said those words in January, I was like, well, now he's just talking to everybody like we're idiots. Okay, and that was really cheesing people off, and that's what brings pressure up. Thankfully, he's not here right now, because otherwise, you know. But to have more of this, and less of, if you want less confrontation, we need more of this. Okay? So that people can be heard and understand better what's going on. Because after your engineer left a couple of weeks ago, Bob was there, I was there, my wife, so we had a much better understanding of why there's water flowing here, why it's somebody else's responsibility, and why it was designated that long before we built our houses. Got no complaint.
And that's the point I think I keep bringing up, is that we talked about that in the meeting or after the meeting?
That was after the meeting,
And did I-
that's the next day.
And did I help you out? No, I'm saying, you and I had a conversation
Yeah.
after the meeting.
Yes,
I figured out what your ask was.
and he was there the next day, and that was perfect.
So, and that's my point, is that the questions, I need to look into it, understand it, and unfortunately, I authorized him to come out, because
It wasn't unfortunate, that was fortunate.
my point is that when I say talk to me afterwards, I had to understand your problem more than a 3-minute time to talk.
Right.
And I believe we agreed that at least I got you some assistance and that you understood the process better.
And I'm trying to encourage you to do more of that.
Awesome. And again, just to go back when we said, when nobody showed up years ago, the board members, the people that are on these committees, they're trying to do the right thing, right? So Melissa's point where if there's no people giving us advice, those people assigned to those tasks have to do what they believe is good for the community, and we can't see in the future.
So again, what is the takeaway of that? Need more communication. Well, you can't say, well, it was in the paper or it's on our website. There's got to be a better way. Think about a better way to get information out to people, because the daily local doesn't practically exist anymore unless you want to spend $25 a week to have them throw 10 pages in your driveway.
But I just,
Go ahead.
Ron has been patient, and I just want to make sure she.
So it goes along those terms. So an idea of better communication. First of all, the website sucks.
Yeah.
I'm on the computer all day. I'm pretty, savvy in that. You cannot find any information. Your number one job right now, fix the website. Let people have a chance to actually find information on the individual. It's possible. Secondly, though, there are many people in this community that don't have access to computers. That aren't on the internet all the time. I grew up in Exton. I work in West Whiteland Township. West Whiteland Township, yes, it is a bigger township. I understand this. They provide a basically newsletter more than once throughout the year. In those newsletters, they list community days, days for recycling, that kind of information. They also include a map of the township with proposed developments, proposed commercial developments, what stages they're on, what phase it is, how many. This is the kind of thing that this township can do to get out to the entire community. And we have this Ready Chesco, which is fantastic. I signed up for it. However, I can guarantee that the majority of people living in Honeybrook have no clue, because there's no way to find out that Ready Chesco even exists.
Okay. Melissa, I got to ask Melissa a question. Do you remember what the website used to look like?
Yes, there was no search button at all.
Well,
It's
and even before that, when
it
I
was-
first came on board, we had front page.
It was very good.
In 2008 or whatever, it was like, Microsoft didn't support it 4 or 5 years. That's what we were running with. So the first thing I did when I came in here, I put together and designed a website, okay? And the first thing I got from everybody was like, this is great. And what happened? I handed it off. I can't run the thing, and I'm not getting paid for it. It just went down the tubes. And I'm in touch with the person that we contracted it with. She says, John, you haven't been updating this. You're vulnerable to hacks and stuff. You don't have your plugins. This website. And so I kept for 2 years saying to the township manager, gotta get this done, gotta get this done. Then one day he says, it's done. I said, what do you mean it's done? He went and pushed it up to the website. We had no visibility whatsoever. I looked at it, same thing like you, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. There's kids in high school do a better job than what we have.
But we
So
have a way
we-
different manager now, so that.
Yes, and we do have someone that came in and started to work on that right now. But the thing is,
What about like I said, the township, it's not just West Whiteland. I know for a fact other townships in this area provide the information in your mailbox so people that don't go on the computer can actually visibly see what's going on.
we have a newsletter, and that was something that Michael Janney was our township supervisor 7 years ago. And she used to write a newsletter, and all you had to do is send her a postage, an envelope with a stamp on it, and she would send you the newsletter. She did that for a few years. She left office, and it dropped off. So then we started it in 2012, and then in 2014, 2015, a company came in and said, hey, we can do this newsletter for you. But if you look at it, I mean, when I pick up the newsletter.
I don't get a newsletter.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Well, the copies that we have, I look at it and I'm like, is this last month or is this the one from last year? It's just the same cover.
But it doesn't have to be monthly, I mean, they do.
Well, it's not
it
monthly,
twice a
and
year.
that's the other thing
It's
too, I don't even know how often or when it comes out. And I'm on the board and I'm saying, well, when's the next newsletter going to come out?
I
That's,
think it's only once a year.
it's supposed to be twice a year, and the problem is we were told that it was going out to all of the residents. And, so I've been hearing that.
What about a digital message board out here?
We talked about that, but the problem with this road here is very little traffic. So it's people who may be going up to Danton Road and all that, ideally, maybe down 322, that would be an ideal thing to
I know it's
do.
difficult for the Amish
Yeah,
to get the message.
well,
They
yeah.
come up and down.
Yeah, but they get mail.
But the only, the problem with those digital messages though, if you ever go to Twin Valley High School, you drive down the road, you can't pull over and read the thing. You're like, was that Wednesday? And boop, you're off the road. So it's digital. Yeah, but it has been, I'm in technology and I can tell you, yes, websites are great, the newsletter, and we made a step in the right direction, but it's a matter of dedicating, staff to do that. I turned to the high school, asked for interns and things like that. That's what we need. Also, through the COG that we have, we work with other municipalities. We had a technology plan that we proposed 6 years ago. We had a vendor come in here. Some of the municipalities followed up on it, Brook Township didn't. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So now, finally, look what we have. We've got a screen, we've got Zoom. I mean, I've got to all these other municipalities. They've had this 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah.
And just understand, please, it's me as a full-time manager, one full-time assistant, 2 part-time employees. West Whiteland Township probably has 45
I
employees.
understand, and that's why I said, I understand West Whiteland is a much larger, a much wealthier township. I understand that they have that ability to do that. But what I'm saying is, when the township isn't transparent to its residents or taxpayers, then they start saying, and then you find out things are going on or developments are being put in that we have no clue about, people start to say, hey, there's something shady going on here.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is there's got to be an easier way to get the information to the public. That's something that you need to really kind of focus on, because I can guarantee a lot of residents didn't even know that this meeting was happening tonight.
Yeah. Well, just to give you a thought, a few years ago, I forget what committee meeting, but Joe Fessenmacher and I, the supervisors, go up to the door, we see the building in darkness, and we say, don't tell us. There's a sign that says meeting canceled. And the two of us looked at each other and said, wow, we're the township supervisors, we don't even know the meeting is canceled. So communication is not the best thing that this township has done. And the website and the layout that I put up there, I provided a lot of content, but now it's not even there. One of the things that, since I've been on the board, we have recognized over 60 people in the community, doing service to the community. Every December, you've got 3 or 4 people getting recognition for it. That was placed up on the website, and you can see going back for the last 10 years, it's not there. We did the dog kennel task force. Melissa was on that, and I'm, talking to one of the supervisors of the municipality to check out our website and looking for this dog kennel task force. They said, "Wow, I'd really like to see that." It's not there, And I'm the one that's like, I wasn't even notified. I'm thinking, I'm finding out the same way you are. I'm going there, and the search, even the search we have right now. If you're working on websites, there's certain levels, and I have a difficult time finding things. Like I'll locate it, then I go to the search button and type that word in, and I still doesn't hit it.
But John,
Because,
did you say you were looking at a contractor who was going to help you redo the website?
well, we do have, who is person that
So we just have someone that's going to be doing some social media posting, right? If it comes to website redevelopment, that's something that the board will have to decide to spend money on.
Yeah.
I've clearly said it at another board meeting, anything is possible,
Yeah.
right? If the township wants to spend $50,000 on a website, they can elect to do that. But that's up to the board, and it's looking at the return on investment. And I've mentioned in the past, we have a new portal coming into our website that's gonna launch, I believe in November. That's gonna have all the meetings. There is you can sign up for email pushes, so when we publish an agenda, you actually get sent a PDF to your email, right? And the reality is, that's a work in progress. Several large municipalities use it, including Newtown Square. Everything is OCR searchable, so you can search all the votes, you can search any of the documents for any of the workshops, the agendas, the meeting minutes. So my ask of the board was, let's get that up this year, and then make the determination, does that meet some of the requirements, and do we only need a minimal upgrade? But, we don't have an active web developer that maintains our website. And the township in the past has paid to develop the website, and there is zero maintenance.
Yeah.
And
To that point, what we did is, what I did is, I looked at the municipalities in the region, and then I looked at, made a chart, all the different things, like sewer, all these different topics, and then looked across and see consistently, these are the items that most municipalities cover in their website. So that's when I turned to our developer and said, this is the minimum, the core that needs to be on this, and a lot of it isn't there right now.
And the site that West Whiteland, Euclid uses, it is just a very large nationwide web developer that specializes in government websites.
Well, I understand that. I'm just giving you an idea that there has to be a way to communicate better to the residents about what's going on. But there's nothing, and nobody's done anything. I've lived here for 12 years, and I have never received a newsletter. I have to go onto a website and constantly try to search for things. Even like the zoning, the only reason I knew about it was because someone posted it into our neighborhood Facebook page. I would have had no clue that was even going on, and that's down the road for me. That impacts my daily life. So the fact that we're not finding anything out, it's a little sketchy. I don't understand why no one has actually thought, hey, like tonight, I think that this room would have been more filled had the information been presented to the entire community, but nobody really knew about this town hall meeting. Does that not, do you not think that that would have been a good idea?
So can I ask you what methods we could have used to make this more accessible? Because we posted on Facebook, we did.
Post on Facebook, but not everybody's on social media.
Oh, okay.
There are Amish living in this community that obviously don't have accessibility to
I'm just
computer.
asking, could you give me a suggestion how we could better this?
That's your job, isn't it?
Well, before you say that, okay.
We're paying you, are we not? So figure it out. Find someone to, guide you. That's not my responsibility. I'm just a resident. I'm just asking you to do
I was just
it.
asking if you had a suggestion, that was all.
Just
And I gave you a suggestion. Send out a newsletter. It doesn't have to be I know West Mail does it. They're not as expensive. They're not as elaborate as West Whitelands, but they do it.
give you an idea.
So why aren't we doing
I
it?
know, and I feel your pain because I have gone to the website over the years, and we don't have content management. We just put up a website and let it just sit. One time I looked at voter services, so I took the link from our website and went to voter services, and I thought, wow, I didn't know Chester County changed their voter services website. Then I read it a little carefully, and it's like Chester County, Tennessee. And that's the kind of stuff that was up there. I've been, following up on all that, but we never had the commitment when it came to any technology. Like I said, in the last 6 months, we've got the television screen up here, we've got Zoom. What it took just to move Honeyburg Township out of the 20th century, that's part of the problem right now. If you took a tour of that room back there, it was still in analog. We had piles and piles and piles of paper. And for years I'm saying, we're at risk. We could have a fire in there and our records are gone. So now it's being, and credit to, again, Mark came in, I sat down with him, talked to a lot of stuff, and he just jumped on it. Half those file cabinets are gone now because we're now scanning the stuff. But Melissa offered to help us a few years ago. She worked with Community Logic. That's another thing. When it comes to permits and all that stuff, there's an application out there we could acquire. Melissa said, I'm willing to come in and work with the township, help them out with it. It never budged. We brought the vendor in, did the presentation, it just never happened. It just never happened.
I have a question.
Yep.
You guys are doing the budget tomorrow?
Yes.
How do we go in and look at that? Where would we find that when it's done?
Yep, so when the budget is, the draft is approved, then we go to, for public comment, so that there's a 30-day period from November, when we approve it with the November meeting, and then by December, we look to see if there's any comments. We respond to the comments. If there's no comments, then we go ahead and approve it. That's the process.
So where do I get a hard copy of it?
Well,
Or where do I get a copy of it? Is it on the website?
it should be on the website.
Once it's up for,
Yeah,
so
for
tomorrow,
public
it's
comment.
just a baseline, the
Yeah.
supervisors are getting just not, it's not even a budget, it's just what we believe we may end up at the end of the year, what we believe our revenues potentially will be in 2023, and what our standard expenses are typically at, with vehicle replacements, upgrades, et cetera, and then it's up to the board to provide input to the professional staff, and then we will make changes based upon their requests.
I have another thing to follow up. Sorry, your name again? Michelle. I don't think showing 2 years of history is enough. You know, we can easily show 5 years or more. At one point, we could go back at least 5 years on meeting minutes but that was a decision that was made. I go in there and I say, who made this decision? The other thing is resolutions. Used to be on the website, it's not there now. There's times when I've got piles of paper at home, and I'm pretty good at organizing things, but I shouldn't be relying on trying to locate a piece of paper to find a resolution. I should just be able to go, as I did 2 years ago, pull the resolution and say, okay, that's what I need. It's not there. So that's coming out of tonight's meeting. We did start on the website. That's the first step. But
Is there any plans to put, like, so East Bradford has, whenever I put a plan application in, I scan it and I put it online. So when an application comes in, they know what the applications were, there's the plans online. That we do it with zoning hearing board, we do it with conditional uses and subdivision land. So is there any way to put, when an application comes in, put it online immediately so people have time to review it?
Yeah.
So that if they want to come to the zoning hearing board, even though they're not within the 500 feet, they're not a party to it, they still want to come, they know what's going on, because you can put those up there.
Well, another problem, the person, I put up the RFP a few years ago, the person that responded and to all the questions, had a good presentation and stuff, she only built websites. So I said to the township manager, this person is not maintaining the sites, we have to get someone to maintain the site. That was never followed through. So that's really the crux of the problem. That slipped through the last few years. It's not going to slip through any further because I can't be going through piles of paper. I've got too much in my house. At one point, I put all my storage boxes that filled, those vinyl storage boxes. I had about 4 packed high, and that's after I purged a lot of stuff. And we are still relying on, we were up to 2 months ago relying on paper copies.
So Warren, is that a possibility?
I think so.
Whatever the board tells me to do, I work for the pleasure of the board, so if they want to redevelop
So would you
websites.
be willing to suggest it to the board? Would you be willing to suggest it to the board?
I'm going to start.
So I am pushing for technology, right? I think we need a new website. We don't accept credit cards here, which I find incredulous in 2022. We accept cash and checks, right? So, yeah, I want to look at all these services. I like e-permitting, absolutely, right? And it's just waiting for the board to give me some direction. And they're hearing input from the citizens here.
Tell me why today you have to come in here during business hours, 9 to 3, to get a piece of paper, a form, when all you have to do is go online, pull an electronic form, fill it out, submit it, it's done.
So Melissa, your answer is yes. I
Yes,
absolutely
you
will.
will suggest it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
They did right now.
Yeah. We're right now we're in the 1980s. We're moving to the 1990s. We'll eventually make it move 100 Township into the 21st century.
Say something like that, Michelle, Val set up a site for us to be up at Harmony Day, and we handed out flyers, so that people know what else going on. I went and posted at the mailboxes of like the Trevor Park, so they knew, relatives, so that thing wasn't going nowhere. But I put under windshield wipers, I did whatever I could.
That's not
No.
So there's certain things that don't cost money. Some communication doesn't cost money.
Yeah.
And one way that you can communicate better is at these board of supervisor meetings when people ask a question to answer it. And, to like Melissa's point, when you make a decision about something, it's really helpful for the public who's sitting here to know why you made that decision. Not just approved, denied, I move on. Just to give some background. I get the feeling like your solicitor keeps giving you guys advice to shut up and don't say anything. And that just doesn't, that doesn't sit well.
If you've noticed the proceedings over the years, a lot of times I'll turn to Christy, Mike, or whoever's sitting up there, and I'll say, could you explain such and such? And they'll go, well, John, I'm like, I already sat through the workshop and I do understand that. The reason is I sat out here in the audience and I know what it's like to sit here and say, what are those guys talking about? So that's why you hear Mike Ryan would say, well, the reason why, blah, 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 and this is just, extending the escrow, blah, blah, blah. And that's all
But
it is.
honestly, the workshops are better to come to because that's what it is.
We have.
Yeah.
We have, and what's been happening throughout the year is we've been told more and more, we can't ask questions, we can't talk. They're only gonna listen to comments, they're not gonna respond to us, and it's gotten worse as the year's gone on.
Just on the last point of what you're saying, and just looking at the time consideration of what I went through when I first moved here, and Jim and I, when we first moved here 20 years ago, we ended up coming here doing the same thing you're doing. Over the last 10 years, Melissa, her mother, her neighbors, they were coming here. They were going to workshop meetings for years, and they were getting to that point where it's like, why do we come to these meetings, And now you're in that same situation. You're just, there's stuff going on that's of great concern. We got to get better at it, but,
And I know communication is a problem, but I think understanding the processes
Yeah.
and why the
Exactly.
processes
Yeah.
are in place.
And in
So-
layman terms?
And I've been
totally
trying
understand
to
that by
explain
people
to
answering
people, like,
questions.
no, like I
Yeah.
called you and talked to
Yeah.
you and explained. So I mean, if people have questions,
And that's.
I'm happy to help people
Yeah.
just because this is what I do for a living. So, I mean, I understand.
one last thing before, did everyone get a chance to speak? Who, anybody else would like to?
Well, I've spoken a lot, but I said one quick
Yeah.
thing that I think is kind of low-hanging fruit and quickly actionable. Currently on agendas for supervisors meetings and so forth, we have items like discussion with D.L. Howell and Associates representatives, presentation of a residential land development concept. This doesn't tell you where, doesn't tell you how much, doesn't tell you when, doesn't tell you what stage. So things like that could be flushed out a lot more
Yeah.
and provide that information. Then when somebody goes and they read this, they'll say, holy crap, that's huge and that's right over there. I gotta go to that meeting. So,
But if they get the plans on site when they come in, on the website when they come in, then you would have them be able to read.
that would be awesome too. But this is just a little bit more typing and something we could do for the very next meeting. So
And-
I just wanted to throw that out there.
And Scott, thank you for filming tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So I feel like I'm doing a service here. You go to 100 Brook Fresh Air, give it a like. All right? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Lynn.
And keep at it. If you need, pass this around. Anybody? Thank you. Reach out, please, send me an email this way.